We good? Are we? Yes. Alrighty. Hi, everybody. I'm Coach Becca. I'm one of the coaches here at Agave, and I specialize in emotional regulation and overcoming self-sabotage. So I absolutely love this topic that we're going to be diving into. And I feel like this is going to resonate with a lot of you, even if you haven't heard of it before. Usually when I'm talking with our members about this, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. So we're going to be talking about rejection sensitivity dysphoria, also known as RSD. So we're going to talk about what it is and how it impacts adults with ADHD. And I'll give you some little micro tips at the end of this so that if you catch it or you realize you're in the thick of it, you can try one of these things to help lessen the emotional flooding that comes with it. So let's see, I was going to share a little story, but think we need to. I've got a client call I have to jump onto. So let's imagine that, let's imagine that you send a text message to a friend and they don't respond right away. Or maybe you send an email or you make a phone call, whatever it is, it's like you put yourself out there to reach out to somebody that's really meaningful to you and they don't respond right away. Maybe they don't respond for, maybe it's not been an hour, maybe it's been a whole day, maybe it's been several days. And the thoughts that start going through your mind are, oh my gosh, did I say something wrong? Oh my gosh, did I do this? Did I do that? Like, did I upset them? It's like that internalization, like that is RSD in a nutshell. It's like when you do something or don't do something just the right way and you start criticizing yourself or you believe that other people are criticizing you, it can really take charge or like take the reins of your emotional regulation abilities. So let me give you a little bit more about it before we dive into some other areas this may show up in your life. So what is RSD actually, and how does it show up in our lives? So RSD is not officially recognized in most diagnostic manuals. RSD is frequently seen in those of us with ADHD because a lot of us feel emotions a lot more strongly than other people. A lot of us are very empathetic people, and we have intense emotional responses to things. So naturally, it comes to us. So RSD refers to an intense, often overwhelming emotional response to the perception, not necessarily the reality of what's happening. So it's an overwhelming emotional response to the perception of rejection or criticism, not necessarily the reality of it. So, for example, imagine you are going to post something on social media. Maybe you're really excited to share it, but after a few hours, there's only been a couple people who've liked it. Maybe they didn't even heart it. Maybe they just liked it. And you're like, okay. And instead of the thought being, maybe people just haven't seen it yet, when RSD gets involved, we might spiral into thoughts like, again, did I say the wrong thing? Was it too much? Oh my gosh, was I too much again? Did I upset somebody? Like we go into that thought loop that can feel really hard just to squash or like turn the volume dial down on. So that's a really good example of how RSD can take a small minor situation or a small moment and like amplify it into something really big and amplify it into something with a significant emotional reaction that can then consume us into that emotional realm. And it doesn't feel good. So now let's talk about how RSD can impact us. Let me get a drink. I've been talking all day. So how can RSD impact us? Now that we have an idea of what RSD is, let's talk about how it can show up. So I've got three, this can show up in so many different ways, y'all, but I just want to give you like three really simple, common examples. So I'm going to talk about personal relationships. Let me look at my notes. Personal relationships, professional life, and then emotional health. Those are the ones I want to run through really quickly. So I'm going to give you another little scenario here. Let's say you are in a group setting and you're going to get some feedback. Like maybe you're in a work meeting. I feel like that's a really commonplace. So let's imagine you're in this work meeting, you're given a small critique or some small feedback, maybe something about you need to add more detail to a report that you submitted. So instead of hearing it as constructive, like, oh, I just need a little bit more information, instead of seeing it that way, you find yourself feeling like you're overanalyzing every line of that report and even questioning like your own abilities and your capabilities and like start questioning, am I even in the right career? Are they just saying that because of this one time like a year ago or whatever? We go down the rabbit holes. And you might spend hours replaying that moment, wondering if people now see you as less competent or less capable. So this is again this is another way that RSD can make even a well-intentioned comment or advice feel like it's a personal attack on your person. It's not about the feedback itself. It usually never is about the actual feedback. It's about how we interpret it, and then we let it take up so much of our mental and emotional space. And over time, if that continues to happen, these constant reactions can really wear down on our self-confidence and on how we see ourselves, our self-esteem, our self-worth, and it can make us avoid situations where we might get feedback or where we might get some sort of criticism, even if it's meant to help us. Okay, so that's personal life. And that, again, that can ripple out into the professional life as well and into so many other areas of your life. When I say that, I think of the big 5 areas of life, which is health and well-being, love and relationships, money, career/business, and spirituality. Like I want you to think of how that has maybe impacted you in one of those areas or multiple of those areas, and how once the seed is planted, it just starts growing and it's like the roots have taken hold. Okay. So now we're going to talk about professional life. So this fear of rejection can also hold us back in our careers, businesses, whatever you do for like work for a living. RSD might make us avoid asking for feedback, or might make us avoid volunteering for projects where there's a chance, again, where there's a chance of being criticized. I'm going to also add in where there's a chance of possible rejection of some sort. Okay. Let me mute myself or put myself on Do Not Disturb. I thought I was still on it. I hear pings happening. And as I say, like rejection, it makes me think of like in middle school in middle school, we would play dodgeball or some sport activity. And it's like, if I wasn't chosen like somewhere at the beginning or the middle, it's like, oh my God, like all the things. It's like, I suck, I'm not good enough. And it's like, I was usually one of the last people chosen, unless it was football or a kickball game. Like I was really good. But it's like that. It's like people know, like, and it's something like that situation. It's like people are being chosen for the sports team, sometimes because of who your friends are, but other times it's because of your skill set, right? So maybe you're perceiving rejection, again, like you're internalizing it instead of just recognizing maybe I just don't have the right skill set for the project that they're looking for, instead of internalizing it and making it mean something about you. So again, this can show up in regards to feedback, not volunteering, not raising your hand, not like putting yourself out there. And we can end up feeling paralyzed by the fear of being evaluated or by the fear of not measuring up, potentially missing out and holding back, which is then like the ripple effect there is we're stunting our own growth in our career because we're so afraid to risk being vulnerable, because it is vulnerable to get criticism or feedback or to put yourself out there. So RSD is one of our beautiful brain's ways of trying to keep us safe and in our comfort zone. And it's like, that's just a very superficial statement. There's a lot more that goes on underneath the surface. So take that for what it is. Okay, third realm that can be impacted, emotional health. I feel like this is such a no-brainer one, because if all of this stuff is spiraling in your mind, of course you're going to be emotionally tired from it. Of course it's going to affect you emotionally. And Over time, the constant stress from fearing rejection can weigh really heavily on our mental health, and therefore it can lead to cycles of anxiety, self-doubt, and even into depression. Okay, so what can we do about it and how can we start to address it? I'm trying to decide which of my 3 drinks do I wanna drink from. Water. Okay, so recognizing RSD and your reactions is the first step to managing it. So let's talk about some coping strategies that can help you take your power back and reduce how much these moments of RSD are impacting you. And there are, how many do I have? I've got 3 little things, 3 little tidbits I want to share. First one is going to be cognitive behavioral techniques, also known as CBT. Um, CBT, yeah, techniques is usually therapy, but same realm. Then mindfulness and emotional regulation, and then setting realistic expectations. So let's talk about cognitive behavioral techniques. With this, you can practice challenging the beliefs that trigger your fears, that trigger all of those spirals or like thought loops that are spiraling out of control in your mind. Excuse me. For example, if you think um, if the thought loop is, if I ask a question, I'll look stupid. What if you could reframe that and look at it from a different perspective? So let's try to reframe it by listing times. Like you can just maybe list them out on paper or list them out in your mind, but listing out times when you asked a question that led to a really good, insightful conversation. Or maybe you had an idea that other people hadn't thought of. And it leads to a really positive outcome and opens up other doors. Like this used to be me. I used to always hate raising my hand. And then I realized, I think it was in college, I realized I actually think of things from a very different perspective and I can see patterns in things that other people don't. So I've gotten over the majority of the time I can get over the fear of raising my hand and putting myself out there because I know one, if I'm thinking it, somebody else most likely is as well. And number two, maybe they're not thinking it because they haven't connected these dots yet because I have that gift. And what if it can lead to something like really helpful or really beautiful? So I've been able to learn to reframe that. Um, let's talk about mindfulness and emotional regulation. Mindfulness practices. It's not always about meditation or deep breathing. Like when I say mindfulness, I think of things that can bring you back to your present. Like I think of like center, like I am in my body, I'm grounded, meaning my feet, I literally took my sandals off before I started this. Like my feet are on the floor. I can feel my butt in the chair. I'm present in this moment. What can bring you back to that present moment for yourself? Because a lot of the time, this is a really important thing because a lot of the time when RSD takes hold and starts running the show, it's like our brain takes us for a joyride. It's not very joyful, but it's like it takes us on this ride and we're in the passenger seat, not in the driver's seat. So, mindfulness practices that can be something like deep breathing, that can be something like meditation, that could be something like journaling, that could be something like going outside, feeling your feet in the sand, on the pavement, in the grass, whatever. That could be like taking a moment to just like, look how beautiful this pencil is. Like, really just like, I'm present with this pencil. And I love that it's got an eraser. That's the whole thing. But it's about bringing you back to the moment so that you can better manage those intense emotions that follow a perceived rejection or criticism. So this is also these mindfulness techniques and emotional regulation. It's like building a buffer almost so that you are able to put space between your emotional reaction and your response. So the goal with any kind of emotional regulation work, this is what I always say is I want you to be able to get to a place where you are responding with intention and choice instead of just reacting to it and letting your body, your mind and body take over. I want you to get to a space where you can have that. And to get there, we've got to have some sort of buffer or some sort of pause. So I feel like what I just shared with you is a really good, simple way. You can do it anytime, anywhere to give yourself that pause moment. And the pause only needs to be like 17 seconds. That's it for you to be like, oh, hey, this is happening. Okay. And then last but not least, setting realistic expectations. Setting achievable goals and avoiding overwhelming yourself with high expectations is really, really important. I don't know about y'all, but I'm a very high achiever. Like, I take on way too many things, and I know this about myself. And it's one of those things, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle, right? So the work here for me is to remind myself to come back to what is actually realistic right now, that what do I have the bandwidth for? What do I have the mental and emotional bandwidth for? And then how can I break those things into smaller, manageable steps? And am I celebrating my progress along the way to shift my focus from perfection into growth? Because RSD can show up so frequently when we set the bar too high for ourselves, because then it feels like we're never hitting the mark, even though we're doing so much more than a neurotypical person probably could ever dream of because of like the way our beautiful brain works and our gifts. So rein it in and look at, are you actually being realistic with yourself? Are you setting realistic expectations of yourself? Or are you being too hard on yourself? Are you being too hard on yourself in regards to how you responded or reacted to the thing that was said, or maybe the thing that you perceived to be said? Okay. And then let's see. Another way you can address RSD, this is extra tidbit here for you, is I feel like professional support's a really like obvious thing. It is in my mind anyways, but I know it's not for everybody. So professional support is really, really important as well. And that could be here with us. That could be through therapy. Therapy and coaching both of those spaces can provide a really safe space to explore your feelings and your reactions so that you can develop a really personalized strategy to manage both your ADHD and RSD when it shows up and rears its head. So, let me see here. I know we're almost at our 20-minute mark, so I wanted to give you guys just a few more practical tips and tools. I think I've got 3. Okay, self-care, community and support, and education. I want to touch on those things really quickly. Let's go with self-care first. So I know this is going to sound redundant and it's going to sound like way too simple. It can't be that simple. But it is because a lot of us don't implement the simple things because we try to overcomplicate it. So self-care, huge. Please make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're drinking enough water, you're moving your body with intention, and eating things that make you feel good. Like those are the basics of self-care, I feel like. And those things can significantly improve your emotional resilience. I can't tell you how many times I eat something, it takes me on like it spikes my blood sugar, I come crashing down, and there's so many mood swings that happen because of that. So pay attention to how your body is feeling and like acknowledge your biological needs. So like food, water, bathroom, movement, things like that. And then community and support. Having support, whether it's through in-person stuff or virtual, they're both incredibly helpful and can be very validating because you are not the only one who experiences these things. And hearing that you're not the only one can be so helpful when you are acknowledged and you are validated and you're supported by those people. So knowing others who share your experience or who just freaking understand it, what you're going through, that can make all the difference. And then lastly, education. I I love learning. I can go down the learning rabbit hole all day long. So to me, learning about these things is also a no-brainer. So reading up on ADHD and RSD and emotional regulation, it can be really empowering to educate yourself, to have a better understanding of why these things are happening the way that they are so that you can recognize there's nothing freaking wrong with you. This is just like, this is how your brain is wired. This is how it thinks about it. And those wire crossovers that your brain has, like those are really strong connections. And we can rewire some of these things with intentionality, with CBT methodology, with coaching, with therapy, with a lot of different tools. And it takes practice. So also please give yourself some grace. So last thing about education, when we understand our brains better, we then can take better, more intentional steps to better manage our reactions so that we can, again, give ourselves that pause so that we can respond instead of reacting like we have maybe done in the past. So, okay, I think that's everything on that. And yeah, I think that that covers everything. Thank you so much. I see there's one person who joined us live. Yay. And I know this is going to be recorded and sent out to everybody else. So if you're watching the recording or if you're here live and you've got questions, message your coach. Let us know how we can support you. If they've got specific questions, like they're very well educated in these things. So we don't know how to support you if you don't ask us or you don't tell us. So please communicate. If this resonated with you, let your coach know. If it riled something up, let us know that too so we can better support you.